down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I apologize. I'm looking around. I'm checking to make sure I have everything up and running. I got a little discombobulated today, but that's okay. Anyway, hey, Jody over on Rumble. I thought that's tomorrow, 420, not 419. Anyway. All right. Well, good evening, everybody. And yeah, this is, Whiskey Wednesday, of course. Let me go ahead and bring that up right here. This is Whiskey Wednesday, where it's like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. And yes, that is correct. It is also apparently the Rumblers like to watch me pantsless. I'm not quite sure where to go with that, but every Wednesday they immediately pop in and they say, "Hey, you know what? It's Pantsless Wednesday, Pantsless Whiskey Warrior Wednesday." I guess, I don't know. Anyway, whatever. Hey, whatever floats your boat. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Anyway, all right. Sorry, the dog is barking because apparently somebody is coming into the studio here just in a little bit. But anyway, all right. So tonight I've got a couple of things for you. I've got some information with regards to one of the things that the Democrats are really pushing in terms of their statistics. They're talking about how kids are dying more than by gun-related deaths than any other thing. I've got something on that. And then I also have some other information with regards to cities, which realistically, I mean, the cities, we got to kind of let them go. I mean, I'll be honest with you. We're getting to a point now where things are just going to keep getting bad. I mean, they've got, defund the police. They, I don't know if anybody's seen like all of the videos and things like that from Chicago and, some of these other places. I mean, I've seen them in like Austin. I've seen them all over. They're going around and they're, spinning cars and slamming into people and slamming into other cars. And you have all of the kids in Chicago that, riot, or I won't say rioted, but went around and like attacked people and things and everything else. So anyway, so it's kind of pretty sad, to be honest with you. But before I get into all of that, of course, tonight I am back to Buffalo Trace for tonight's drink. And that's because it's, it's one of those things I really do enjoy. I actually I'm enjoying this particular bottle, so that I'll probably end up getting more once I finish this one. All right. Okay. And for tonight's sponsor, affiliate sponsor, whatever, we have, let me just, True Grit Roots Network. And man, that really doesn't, I need to do something better with that logo. Anyway, True Grit Roots Network champions independent artists while paying respect to the pioneers who shaped modern roots music, featuring outlaw country, blues, and rock with a unique twist of urban that is carefully selected and purposely put together. We are the radio highway that connects the back roads, highways, and city streets to your favorite dance hall, roadhouse, and juke joint. TGRN provides exclusive original programming and interviews that are produced and hosted by our own team of DJs, hosts, and personalities. Find us on the web at tgrn.net or to download our app in the App Store and from Google Play. Alternatively, you can find us in the Live 365 catalog of internet digital radio stations and through the Live 365 app as well. You can also play our station on your Amazon Alexa by saying play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. Be sure to use the word from in the command play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. Live 365 is also on Roku, so you can play it through your television. Breaking boundaries for authentic roots radio, True Grit Roots Network, tgrn.net, Austin, Texas. And of course, full disclosure, I am part owner in TGRN. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I've pretty much come to the conclusion, honestly, that most of the major cities, if not all of the major cities, are they're pretty much lost. I mean, let's just face it. They have a certain element within them that, for whatever reason, the urban dwellers that are there have, let's just say they've stepped off the reservation in terms of what they are doing. I know from living in a state like I do in Washington, Oregon, and California have this common thing, whereas the state is run by the cities. And so when you hear people talk about, Washington being a blue state, or Oregon being a blue state, California being a blue state, the reality of it is that none of the three actually are blue states. They're realistically, once you step out of the cities, they're more purple in nature. Some cases, in some areas, they're even more red than anything else. And you can see this on maps that are readily available if you want to look them up. There's apps all over, there's websites all over that basically show on a county by county basis the way, say, for an example, the 2020 election went. And in doing so, that basically means that, when you look at those blue counties, several of those blue counties are either encompassing the entire city or are part of a couple of different counties for encompassing the cities. So now, the one caution that I do want to throw about looking at those maps is you need to understand that several counties may not have a lot of population. And so, this is an argument that the left brings to the table, is they're like, well, open land space doesn't vote. Well, that is true on its face and that kind of thing. But you also need to understand too, that even though that's the case, it still shows that, the states are really more purple in most cases than they are necessarily red or blue. Either way, they kind of get mixed. But one area that seems to be a common issue across the board is our cities. And this is reflected immediately within things like crime and violence and some of the things that you're seeing in the mainstream media these days. Is you're dealing with, a large concentration of people in a small physical area, and in some cases, it's even like a specific segment of that city. It's maybe not the entire city as a whole, but it's a certain segment of the city that's in there that is causing most of the problems. And so I just want to bring this up. Let me see here. Yeah, okay. So I didn't grab the right thing here. So hold on. Gotta find it. Here it is. So last weekend we had a couple of what they call mass shootings, large mass shootings, and obviously the press ran with it because, of course, they're wanting to highlight the gun control narrative. But the thing is here, this happened in Dadeville, Alabama, where there was a mass shooting at a Sweet 16 birthday party. And by mass shooting, there was at least 4 dead. 32 others that got injured. They have caught the suspects, and they're a 16-year-old and 17-year-old for this particular shooting. Now, the article that I have here kind of goes into a little bit about the number of people killed, sort of what happened. There is some hint that the perpetrators were essentially had some sort of a long-standing athletic beef with one of the individuals that was at the party. There isn't really a lot of details there, but essentially the idea here is that, first of all, it was young kids that were doing it first of all. And second of all, let's just look, if you look at the predominance of the ethnic background of the targets. Now, the funny thing is they don't actually mention anything about the two teens in the article, about the two perpetrators in the article. But I'm hazarding a guess that it's likely that these two were of the same ethnic origin as the victims, as the majority of the victims. There is a suggestion that they could have had prior warning, meaning that, for an example, let's see, who is this? So a 2018 Dadeville High graduate, Corbin Damontre Holston, who was 23 and a former athlete at the school, Holston had gone to the party to check on a younger family member who feared trouble about it. So apparently there was a family member there who was worried about possible trouble. And so they sent, or this young adult, 23 years old, went to the location, apparently. And so there was, the shooting began shortly after Holston arrived, and that he went ahead and pulled his younger relative to safety. So there really isn't too many details as to why, but the fact of the matter is that it appears that there was at least some sort of a relationship, some sort of a situation that might have sparked this incident. So yeah, they're still developing things about this, but is still developing details, I should say. But this does bring up again the point that they also don't talk about. By the way, they haven't talked about the type of weapon that was used. My guess is that's probably because, even though this is Fox, it's probably because of the fact that it wasn't necessarily a rifle. It was more than likely a handgun. Usually when they leave the weapon out of the story, that typically means that it's a handgun because, again, it doesn't go against, or it goes against the narrative for the left. But that being said, this is a tragic event. And, again, it kind of goes back to the idea that I've been talking about on social media and everything, that we really need to work on things that are actually going to make a difference, not necessarily all these assault weapons bans. Now, to go along with this, Biden has been running around and reiterating essentially what the right has been calling a false claim, that guns are the leading killer of children. And so, because of this, I went ahead. Now, this is a Breitbart article, so it's a right-leaning news source, but I wanted to check their numbers. And they they had a couple links in here that I went and took a look at. But one of the things that they did pull out of this article that I found interesting is the fact that if you go to the CDC's website and you go to take a look at the information, the CDC automatically separates out age groups and includes in the idea of children the ages 18 and 19. Now, the last time I checked, that's legally an adult. So if Biden is pulling that number from the CDC, and the CDC included 18 and 19 within that, then, obviously that's definitely going to be kind of a bit of a problem. And like Buddy points out over here on Rumble, he says that abortion is actually the leading cause of death of children. And you're not wrong. You are definitely not wrong on that as well. However, let's just focus on the guns versus things like motor vehicles as an example. So as I said, I went and took a look at the links, and I pulled up. Now this is a link, or this was one of the first links, and it takes you to this website. Now this website is Whiskers, WISQARS.CDC.gov. So this is a subdomain owned by the CDC. Now they went ahead and they've got this wonderful little thing. You can go through and, filter out the data right here. As you see in the blue that's highlighting here, you can go and do data filters and things like that. So I went ahead and grabbed the latest year that they had on this particular website, which is 2020. And I just said, look, I'm just going to look at 2020 stats. And I went ahead and filtered out the age range going from less than 1 all the way up to 17 itself. And taking out obviously 18 and 19. And so what I found was the number of deaths was listed for a firearm related death was 2,281 for all kids 17 and under of all races, all ethnicities, all injury types, and basically metro and non-metro for the year of 2020. Now, I did the exact same thing, again, using Whiskers data, and did it for the all motor vehicle deaths overall, and I came up with a number of 2462. So, based off of this information, it says that 2281 for the number of firearm deaths and 2462 for the number of motor vehicle deaths in 2020. That means that Biden is actually incorrect. Now, before we go and jump to conclusions, though, I went and I put these stats, I posted these stats as a response to somebody on Twitter, and they came up with another website, also part of the CDC. It's this guy, and this one's called wonder.cdc.gov. So once again, this is Wonder. Wonder is a subdomain of the CDC. And so because of that, they are also pulling numbers. And this particular search engine scenario is a little more difficult to work with. You have to kind of dig through, but I went ahead and did it. And so in this one, I pulled out the firearm deaths. These are all of what you can see here on the screen is the codes. All of these individual, if you look, all of the individual entries in the table are based off of what they call the death code, or meaning how hospitals and things like that classified the death. And there's multiple different codes that are used. But when between, discharge, just a regular discharge, or unintentional self-harm, or assault, or, again, just a handgun discharge from undetermined intent, etc. And the funny thing is that this particular piece of data came up with the exact same number, 2281, as the Whiskers did, 2281 for 2020 firearm deaths. But here's where things get a little interesting. And that is under, remember our number here, 2462 for motor vehicle overall deaths in Whiskers. I did the exact same thing in the other website that was presented. And this one actually shows the number being off and different. This one shows 2231 for motor vehicle deaths in 2020 versus the Whisker number of 2462. So the question has to be asked when Biden stands up and says things like children die more from guns than they do motor vehicle deaths. The question has to be asked, where'd you get your numbers? And what are you including? Now, the Breitbart article claims that that Biden is actually including the 18 and 19-year-olds as well. But I'm even going one step further and saying there's a potential discrepancy in, for an example, these two websites. So depending upon where you get your stats, it could be true, it could be not true. But the point is that Biden is actually standing up and saying this as a irrefutable truth. And that's not the case. It's not an irrefutable truth. Okay. Now we have to be cautious. And I was seriously all ready and all fired ready to come on here and just say that Biden's a liar and so on and so forth. And then I'll admit I got a little humbled because of the fact that I was using one set of data when somebody else showed me another set of data, and I found this discrepancy. Now, keep in mind, in 2021, when you use the, because Whiskers doesn't have 2021 data, Whiskers only has the 2020 as its latest data amount. But when you go to the wonder.cdc.gov and you can go up to 2021, and that basically changes things, obviously. And once again, the CDC, based off of the CDC Wonder stats, state that, yes, children died more from handguns, or sorry, not handguns, but from firearms related incidences versus motor vehicles. Now, the funny thing about this is that nobody takes into account that from 2020 and 2021, we were still dealing with COVID. And so there could be some variances there where you're dealing with some challenges. Maybe some schools in some cities hadn't opened up yet. You could look at risk factors and things like that. There's a whole slew of other data that we could work with. But the point of the fact is that we have to be very, very careful when we are looking at data and understanding where it came from and understanding how it was obtained, and also comparing it to other places. We need to be very cognizant of what we are, and even, Joe Biden should be cognizant of what is out there. I wanted to bring that up, but why do I say, get out of the cities? Well, as we all know, there is a lot of issues with people in the cities. And for an example, let me just take one that's close by here. Well, we all know about, it's been widely publicized about Walmart leaving Chicago. And I've seen, videos and things like that of, there was this one video that I saw, a video clip where this lady, didn't know who she was, but she's walking around a Walmart that had just been ransacked. And she was basically saying on the video, and you can hear in her voice that she's crying at the same time, but she's going in and she's basically saying that she is trying to get food for her family. And she walks in and she doesn't understand why people are walking or why people are going and ransacking these stores, because they are actually taking food away from the residents that actually live there. And the only thing I found it a little interesting that the only thing that I saw within the video, the short clip, she's walking through the produce section and there's a wall where there was a bunch of stuff, a bunch of bare space on the wall, but then there was a whole section of celery. So the celery was left. Everything else was taken, but the celery was left. Kind of thought that was sort of interesting. But it's not just that. I mean, we're looking at, you hear it in the news, like Target is leaving. You have Walmart leaving. Walgreens has left stores in San Francisco and all of these other things. But this is from a nearby neighbor of mine. This is Portland, Oregon, and Portland's only REI store to go ahead and close and they're citing crime and theft. And so there was a coffee shop apparently in this same area that was closing in a downtown location because of rising crime. I've been hearing reports of people in Portland saying that, Portland is going away. We have Whole Foods, like Bonnie says over on Rumble. Whole Foods has left certain cities and things like that. But it's not just, it's basically showing in a huge way that soft on crime policies and rampant crime because of those soft on crime policies are causing these places to go ahead and close up. And also another one here, this is a brand new Shake Shack that was essentially, it hadn't even opened yet, and it was already smashed up before, and this was going to be Portland's first Shake Shack, and it was hit by vandals before it was even opened. I've also heard of a couple of other places that hadn't even opened yet, and they were vandalized. They had just finished their construction, and they were immediately vandalized right away. And so this is just crazy. And why anybody would want to live in these neighborhoods, I honestly don't know. Cracker Barrel, according to this article from the Post Millennial, Cracker Barrel had announced that it was closing its only remaining locations in the city following an announcement from Walmart that it was closing its Portland area locations due to lack of profits. What a lot of these, especially what a lot of these leftists don't seem to understand is that the whole purpose, and apparently a pizza chain that is identified as woke called Hot Lips announced the closure of 3 of its 5 Portland stores. But a lot of these leftists don't seem to get is that these people and these stores, they service a community, they service a need, but they're there to make profit. They're not there to be some charity handout case. That's not what they're for. They are there to make money because of our capitalist society. And I mean, that's the purpose of these businesses. And so you can't sit here and expect these people to just take rampant crime and loss of profit and dollars. And some of these places even go in the back. Some of these places are operating in the red almost all year until they hit Thanksgiving, which is where the term Black Friday comes from, is because Black Friday, Black Friday is when they make up their money. They make their most money and they actually start operating in a profit, at a profit. And so, these people, and just like with the riots in, 2019, just like the riots that took over when, George Floyd was killed and everything else, the purpose and the reasons for it were, certainly identifiable, but going around and burning businesses and burning everything up and blowing everything up and destroying everything, that does nobody any good. And so, for them for these people to sit here and especially in Chicago, when you had all those Democrat city leaders standing there and they're, saying they're blaming Walmart for leaving, and they're blaming them and saying, well, you're doing this to perpetrate atrocities against, the community, whether it's a black community, white community, whatever. They're there to make a profit. They're there to make money. That's their purpose. And they provide you with a service, and that service, and they provide you with deliveries of goods in order to make that profit. That's their whole point. That's their whole purpose. And if you really want to look at where, the idea of communism or socialism comes from, in terms of the idea of, hey, we, we're just going to hand out stuff, and people who have to give to the people who don't, that kind of stuff, it doesn't work. Never has. That's why places and countries that use that get just totally demolished over time, because eventually what ends up happening is you don't have enough people to actually do the work because there's no benefit to them. So anyway, as far as that goes, that's, this is destruction and everything else. But another thing that's kind of interesting that I want to debunk a little bit is the idea that, and Dan Bongino's talked about this. He actually has talked about this quite a few times, is that the idea that, broken windows policing works. So what is broken windows policing? So the best way for me to describe it is basically this. It essentially means that you arrest the perpetrators of lower level crimes. And those same perpetrators are actually the ones who are doing the higher level crime. And I've actually even maintained that there's stuff going on where it's a certain segment of society, and if you don't lock them up, that is perpetrating all this, by the way, and you don't lock them up, you're doing a disservice to the entire community. And so this article popped, which sort of proves that mentality, that we have a certain segment of society that is doing all of this crime. And by certain segment, I don't mean a certain ethnicity. What I mean is there's a certain criminal element that if they were to go and get picked up and locked up, that you would find that crime would drop dramatically. And this popped in Red State. Apparently, a report came out that New York City found that 327 people only account for a third of all New York City shoplifting. So this is from the New York Times. The New York Times reports nearly a third of all, well, the article's in Red State, but Red State's quoting the New York Times. The New York Times reports that nearly a third of all shoplifting arrests in New York City last year involved just 327 people, the police said. Collectively, they were arrested and rearrested more than 6,000 times. Police Commissioner Keechant Sewell said, some engage in shoplifting as a trade, while others are driven by addiction or mental illness. The police did not identify who they were, so that's fine. So a small number of robbers account for a huge percentage of the shoplifting. But they also, according to the report, tend to target a small number of stores. So the victims of those shoplifting is also concentrated. There was 18 department stores and 7 chain pharmacy locations accounted for close to 20% of all the complaints. So essentially this soft on crime idea where we catch the bad guy, we put him in lockup, and then we let him go hours later has been shown and obviously presents a common problem across the board. And it's not just shoplifting. I've seen reports of a very similar nature of people who have gone and been violent also, had just been picked up doing something else and they were let go. So this whole concept of being soft on crime is apparently not working very well. It really isn't. And so, again, you're dealing with a bunch of people in a small area and some of them are doing very bad things, and they're starting to break things down. Yeah, Jer, I wouldn't go to New York. Jer over on Rumble says, I used to always want to go to New York. And he says, screw that now. Well, I agree. Don't go to New York. Seattle, believe me, Seattle's close to me. I try and avoid it like the plague. I really do. I really try and avoid it. And speaking of Seattle, this is a nice little segue, but speaking of Seattle, some of the Democrat policies, they have a huge emphasis on dividing up society into groups. Okay. And you have to be a member of specific groups and things like that, so on and so forth. Well, one of the things that that the left constantly does is they want to break you up into racial and ethnic groups. And those racial groups, obviously they've talked about, they really hit on the Caucasian segment of society a lot. However, there is this thing that we passed in 1965. Trying to remember what it might be. It was championed by a gentleman by the name of Martin Luther King. And it has something to do with civil rights. And that civil rights has something to do with the color of your skin. Well, it's kind of interesting talking about Seattle, which is supposed to be progressive and all inclusive and, bringing people together and being a wide ranging, anyone can come kind of society and idea, and saying that the right is not doing that the Republicans are not doing that. Well, one of the most leftist cities, Seattle, has just been hit, according to Just the News, with a civil rights complaint, a federal civil rights complaint for racial segregation. And I guess the district itself hasn't responded to a year of warnings from the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism. So Seattle Public Schools was separating students, I should say, by race in multiple programs, according to the article here. A month after it hastily removed racial eligibility criteria from a potluck that implicitly excluded whites and Jews. So the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism filed a complaint Tuesday with the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights against the district's Pathfinder K-8 school after a year of unheeded warnings that its practices violated Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. So apparently it's their first Office of Civil Rights complaint and is the most egregious version of racial separation. This is according to FAIR, the Foundation of Intolerance and Racism. I'll just refer to them as FAIR from now on. And they say that the most egregious version of racial separation it has seen in submissions to its tracking portal, the managing director of legal advocacy, Lee Ann O'Neill, told Just the News. Multiple sets of Pathfinder parents, and that's a school, by the way, that's the school's name, Pathfinder. Pathfinder parents started notifying FAIR in November of 2021, but have not spoken publicly for fear of being called a bigot, she said. Atlanta Public Schools, according to the article, is also under a long-delayed OCR probe for allegedly segregating black students in their own classrooms and retaliating against parents who objected to their daughter's placement in such a classroom. It recently separated a majority black school from majority white schools in an academic recovery summer program. So Fair's complaint back to the Seattle school lays out Pathfinder's invitations to BIPOC and multiracial families and students for events and programs, including a community cafe, feedback-oriented listening sessions, and lunchtime community building groups. The Pathfinder school said last fall it would offer affinity groups for BIPOC, mixed race, and white and Jewish participants, but apparently it cut back to just black students in January, to be first offered to middle schoolers and then elementary students. So it looks like apparently that this whole idea of inclusion that the left pushes, which, I mean, anyone with a brain knows that the left doesn't push inclusion, but they are actually going to have to deal with the idea that maybe people aren't so happy about being divided by race anymore here in America. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to have to keep an eye on that just because it's close to me. But I'm also going to have to keep an eye on it because, I mean, again, folks, let's just lay it out. And I've said it multiple times. To segregate or to classify a person by a immutable characteristic such as hair color, eye color, skin color, any of those kinds of things is totally against the idea of the whole melting pot of America. We have to be inclusive just by our very nature. We welcome, and we have said multiple times that we welcome people from all cultures. And what's supposed to happen is the best part of the culture is supposed to get assimilated into the American system. And the stuff that isn't quite so good gets dropped off in terms of things that are against, say, the American values, freedom and so on and so forth. But the thing about it is that the left has now kind of painted themselves into a corner. They're attempting to elevate certain segments of society higher than others. And it's just not happening. I mean, it's eventually going to come back and bite them. And it looks like it's already starting to, which is fantastic in my view. Okay. Now, another thing in terms of, moving out and getting out of the cities. Okay. In terms of other things that are going on, and actually Buddy Weiser over on Rumble made a comment here. Most kids now probably never heard of the Civil Rights Act. They don't teach anything now. And that's pretty much true. They don't teach anything but gender studies and CRT, which of course CRT contributed to stuff like this. I can tell you that I have been in Seattle public schools at the elementary school level, as well as middle schools and high schools. I've been in all of them, and I can guarantee you there are several copies of Ibram X. Kendi's book within the classrooms, readily available for these folks to read, unfortunately. But anyway, so further conversation here, in terms of things where, the left keeps talking. One of the things that the left talks about is they keep pulling up the idea that the blue states are, subsidizing the red states. And I talked about that in another episode. I'm not necessarily going to rehash that. However, there is a report that came out, and honestly, I mean, if you look at things like Florida and you look at things like Texas and Florida both, if you look at the way that our economy is going in particular, Texas and Florida generally have a very good methodology for recession-proof and economic issue-proof in their economy. Now, if you look at Florida, for an example, during COVID, when all the blue states shut down and their economies went to crap, Florida fared fairly well. Texas followed suit. California, not so much. And that was, could be directly correlated to the COVID reactions and responses to the virus. But one thing that always comes back is people talk about how the blue states are usually richer than the red states and so on and so forth. Again, the blue states are subsidizing the red states with all the tax money that they get. And under certain conditions, again, tying back in the whole thing about stats, you have to be sort of careful with the statistics because you really need to understand where the numbers are coming from and, what is being correlated within the statistics. But this particular report that came out, and this is in the Epoch Times, states that for all the 50 states, the GOP-led states are in the best economic condition right now. And so this report states that all 50 states, from best to worst for economic conditions, it also shows which states have improved and which states have worsened in creating an economic climate where businesses want to invest. So this is put out by the American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, released the state analysis, which ranks Utah as number 1, North Carolina as 2nd, Arizona as 3rd. Idaho and Oklahoma fill out the top 5, ranking 4th and 5th. Jonathan Williams, who is the ALEC's chief economist who co-authored the report, says the proof is in the pudding. Utah was the fastest growing state in the country by population, over 18% population growth just in the last decade. So one of the key themes that we see, not just in Utah, but in so many of the top 10 or the top half of states, is that states that get it right with policy are getting it right with migration as people continue to vote with their feet. Taxpayers are continuing to vote with their feet against high tax states and going towards states that offer more economic opportunity and really a better quality of life and a lower cost of life. And he says that we've been doing this long enough that there are really no accidents and no flukes, he adds. So they created these rankings and they put him in 15 metrics. And the metrics are all equally rated. I'm not going to go through all 15. You can go to the Epoch Times and read the piece. But the point is that if you're looking at things like personal income tax rate, corporate income tax rate, property tax burden, sales tax burden, remaining tax burden, in state and inheritance tax. And then there's also, debt as a share of tax revenue, state minimum wage, average workers' compensation cost, whether or not it's a right to work state, and the number of tax expenditures and so on and so forth. But at the bottom of the list, so I gave you the top 5. Here's the bottom. New York is last. Vermont is ranked 49th. Minnesota is 48th. New Jersey is 47th. Illinois, 46th. And California as 45th. And Williams also said in this quote, "This isn't just theory. These are items that we know both from an academic perspective. These policies that we track, the things that we know matter just from a historical perspective. But then now in the last 16 years, it has been just phenomenal to look at. It's not just a theory. It actually works in practice." So again, the top 5, Utah, North Carolina, Arizona, Idaho, Oklahoma. Those are the top 5. Rounding the top 10 are Wyoming, Indiana, North Dakota, Florida, and Nevada. Texas comes in at 13. Tennessee, Georgia, they're at 11 and 12, so on and so forth. Down at the bottom, you have the bottom 10. Okay. Rhode Island, Maryland, Hawaii, Oregon, Maine, California, Illinois, New Jersey, Minnesota, Vermont, and New York. Yeah. So, again, so GOP-led states are in the best economic condition. Well, the transfer of people from, moving from red states into blue, or moving from blue states into red states, okay, is the fact that it's more than just economics. This article popped in red state, and they basically state this: blue state exodus is about more than economics. We're fed up with being treated like we're stupid, which honestly, I would totally and 100% wholeheartedly agree. Case in point, Washington just passed a law that allows the state to essentially take your children without your knowledge if they decide to run away without and over the idea of gender affirming care. They can head off to a halfway house and be given that care without parental permission. Okay. So once again, this is kind of the idea. The left believes that the right is stupid, that the conservatives are stupid and everything else. And they're just off their rockers. So I don't necessarily blame people for leaving their states. And so, California has been dropping and so on and so forth from it. But apparently there's some more changes that are coming. And this red state article quotes the Daily Mail, UK. Americans are voting with their feet and waving goodbye to eye-watering taxes, high living costs, and bad job prospects in Democrat-leaning areas for better deals in red states, experts told DailyMail.com. Recent data from the U.S. Census Bureau shows how states as New York, Illinois, and Hawaii saw their population shrink between 2021 and 2022, while Florida, Texas, Montana, and South Dakota saw big population gains. Americans who discovered just how adversarial and corrupt their government was opted to move to parts of the country where economic and personal freedoms were prioritized over government control. So yes, it does involve economics, but it also means freedom-loving common sense. We're not stupid, and we're simply tired of a government that is treating us as such. And that's from the piece. Apparently, a similar pattern plays out at the county level. So it's not just state level that's happening, but it's also at the county level. Arizona's Maricopa County was the fastest growing in the U.S., adding 56,831 residents in 2022, a gain of 1.3% against 2021. Meanwhile, Los Angeles County, California, which includes the city of Los Angeles, posted a loss of 90,704 people. So anyway, the point being is that, yes, there is a huge migration going on, and there are a lot of people who are leaving blue states and going to red states. This is happening all over the place, everywhere, throughout the entire country, for all these different places. And it's not just for economic reasons, although economics definitely is the first thing up. All right. So before I get on to the rest of my articles, let me go ahead and do tonight's Pet of the Week.
Please check your mailbox. A new message has arrived.
All right. And tonight's Pet of the Week is focused on outlaw dogs. She has 3. They're outlaw dogs, plural, but outlaw dogs, there's 3 of them. The one that I'm going to focus on tonight is Billy the kid. So let me go ahead and bring this up, and I'll get rid of that. I'm going to bring Billy up here. Where is he? There he is. All right. So here's Billy as a puppy. So here's what Outlaw Dog sent me about Billy. This is feature Billy the Kid. He is a Royal Transylvanian treeing walker coonhound hound. Okay. me try that again. Royal Transylvanian Treeing Walker Coonhound Hound. Okay. So here's Billy's stats. Sorry, got to close the door to the studio. Okay, so here's Billy's stats. Billy is one of 8 puppies that Bonnie and Clyde, and I'll show them later, on another day, had on August 6th of 2018. We put him up for adoption, but he was returned 6 months later. So here is him as a puppy, and here is him coming back probably about 6 months later. He was a scared, skinny little guy, and it broke my heart. So I decided to keep him and fatten him up. Now he is a happy, fat, spoiled brat. His story is similar. Well, hold on. Here's the puppy litter. Got to show that. The puppy litter. But here he is as Max, and his story is similar to that of Max in The Grinch. And here he is actually dressed up as Max. His favorite treats are carrots, and Bonnie and Clyde both love him, and they are such an adorable family. Now, one thing about outlaw dogs is the fact that they all like to dress up. I've shown them before. They've done leprechauns. They've done Christmas, as you can see here, Max, and the other Grinch. And then they also do things for New Year's like this. And so here's Billy in his New Year hat, ringing in the new year. And that is Max, and that is tonight's Pet of the Week. Do me a favor, if you would like to have your pet featured on Pet of the Week, send me a photo or photos, because I do multiples. You can send them to fans, FANS, that's Foxtrot Alpha November Sierra, at whiskeymusings.online. Fans at whiskeymusings.online. Send me some photos, the name, breed, any kind of story that you might want to pick up with and stuff like that. I can tell you I do have the other 2 of outlaw dogs, both Clyde as well as Bonnie, in the queue right now. But you can certainly submit, and I will get them on. You can also send me an email for the question for whiskey, which happens on Saturday nights. That's my Saturday night segment. You can do questions for whiskey at the same address, fans at whiskeymusings.online. And you can send the questions in to me. I believe I have 1 or 2 questions in the queue. So if you have a question, please feel free to send it on over to me. I would appreciate it. And we'll get you put on the show. Get the question answered, get the pets put on the show, whatever kind of works. All right. So I don't know if anybody has been watching, but this whole debunked idea that Wuhan did not, or the Wuhan flu, I'm going to call it out, probably get kicked off from YouTube on this. So, hey, if you're over on YouTube, just remember, Rumble's the place to go. The Wuhan flu apparently has been now proven not once, not twice, but 3 times or 4 times, or maybe 5. I don't remember. But has been proven multiple times that the COVID virus came from the Wuhan lab. And let me explain that to you right now. So this bombshell report, this is a report or an article in Just the News. Bombshell Senate GOP report, COVID leaked from Wuhan lab where U.S. funded gain of function research. So, God, this is, I'm going to be honest. I'm kind of getting to the point where it's sort of like the idea that, Trump says, are you ever getting tired of winning? I'm getting tired of conspiracy theories turning into spoiler alerts. I'd really like to stop. I'd really like to go back to the idea that conspiracy theories are literally just conspiracy theories. And the reason that I say this is because of the fact that I'm actually now starting to think that, things like UFOs being alien objects and contrails in the sky, I'm starting to doubt some of my preconceived notions about those things. Honestly. So I'm getting to a point that, now that I'm starting to find starting to see all of these conspiracy theories becoming true. This is really tough for me. So anyway, in the bombshell report, in the piece, I should say, in the article, Kansas Republican Senator Roger Marshall is warning that a new virus could break out of China and cause another worldwide pandemic as he releases Muddy Waters, a comprehensive new report on the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic. He is the ranking member of Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, and staff apparently reviewed more than 50,000 documents for the report, which found that the COVID-19 virus was created in a lab and the outbreak was likely the result of 2 unintentional lab leaks. Okay, so here's the thing. Back when they did the genome for the virus and they found the CGG combination, which has never been found to exist in natural things across the earth, that it is a common practice to insert those genomes when you're doing a lab functionality gain of function research. Once that information hit, I pretty much knew. And I'm sorry, I'm self-praise stinks. I'm not going to slap myself on the back. But I am going to basically say that, COVID was made in a lab. Now its purpose and why it was made, is always been in question. Obviously it was for research, gain of function, but you got to understand what would be the purpose of doing gain of function. By the way, just so everybody knows, gain of function research is actually outlawed in the United States. That's part of the reason why all of these labs are being done over in China and, for an example, have been accused of being done over in Ukraine. Okay. So COVID-19 was created in a lab. The only person that I can think of or the only reason that I can think of for this would be to create some sort of a bioweapon or potentially to attack a specific segment of society, potentially to get rid of or sickness and get rid of a certain segment of society. By that, I'm talking the aged. I have a bad feeling that what was actually going on in China was the fact that they were doing this research in order to create this virus to be able to take out some of their older population so that they wouldn't have to pay them anymore. But that is just a conspiracy theory and not real. But anyway, okay. So again, COVID leaked from a Wuhan lab, and then this article popped up, and apparently former director of national intelligence Radcliffe testified that the Wuhan lab is responsible for spawning the global pandemic. Gee. So this is the former DNI who brought it out. And Ratcliffe's sworn testimony comes the morning after reports that a new Senate report concluded. So he's actually in a House Select subcommittee testifying when the Senate report comes out that I just told you about. And so, yeah, so the U.S. funded this through the NIH and everything else. I mean, come on, seriously, we're getting to a point now where this is all just like old news, to be honest with you. Yeah. So anyway, so DNI Radcliffe, or former DNI Radcliffe, basically confirmed in a different scenario. I mean, yeah, let's just go. But what's even funnier though is that, and hang on just a second, I gotta check to make sure that I brought this up. Yeah, so So here's another article that popped that kind of brings a little interesting angle to this. This is also in Just the News. Apparently, the intel community may be stalling on COVID origin assessments for political reasons. And again, this is the ex-director says this. So the CIA's unjustifiable refusal to formally assess COVID-19 origins suggests that the Biden administration is afraid to face the enormous geopolitical consequences of a confirmed lab leak head on, in line with its reluctance to confront China on its spy balloon or anything else that we're dealing with in terms of China. Okay. So, yeah. So here we are. So John Radcliffe also has made this suggestion that the CIA has unrivaled capacity to acquire information and near limitless resources to do so, casting doubt on its official explanation that it lacks enough information to evaluate. So basically, Radcliffe is calling BS on the CIA in the fact that the CIA is saying, well, we don't have enough information to know whether it was a lab leak or not. He's basically saying, give me a break. The CIA has nearly unlimited capacity to acquire information and the resources to do so. So the FBI and 2 Department of Energy labs have also concluded the Wuhan Institute of Virology leak is the likelier source for SARS-CoV-2 than its natural origin, which again was trying to be pushed to be the wet market and the pangolin monkeys or a bat or whatever. 4 unidentified intelligence community agencies lean toward the latter hypothesis, according to the current DNI, Avril Haines' unclassified October assessment. So here we are again. I mean, the president and this current administration are trying to cover up, keep quiet, whatever. But yeah, I mean, seriously, come on, folks. This is a little out there for most of us. Okay, I'm just going to be. And speaking of cover-ups and things of that nature, there also is this, which came out this week. Oh, folks, what are we going to do with this corrupt administration? Really, seriously, what are we going to do with them? Elon Musk came out with a interview with Tucker Carlson, and he revealed that U.S. intel agencies had full access, not just partial, not just sometime, but full access to private Twitter DMs. And he also talks about a new encryption feature that he's rolling out for the setup here. And he's got a part 2 apparently that's going to air. Oh, well, it did air last night at 8 p.m. So he revealed in an exclusive interview with Fox's Tucker Carlson that the United States, along with foreign government agencies, was granted full access to direct messages of private citizens on Twitter prior to his takeover. Now, let me explain something to you really, really quick here. Okay. I believe it's the 4th Amendment. I'm going to have to make sure of this, but we have an amendment in the Constitution that essentially states that warrantless searches and seizures, that we as Americans have a right to be secure within our papers, our effects, and our persons. And if what Elon is saying is completely true, which at this point, I don't necessarily have any reason to necessarily doubt him at this point, because, I mean, it's been proven to be suspect for quite some time. But if that proves to be true, then we have not only a First Amendment violation, we have a Fourth Amendment violation by our federal government. And if that's the case, we're talking about a huge problem. And thank you for confirming. It is the Fourth Amendment. I'm seeing this from King Nothing over on Rumble. Smart audience. I got a smart audience. I got to tell you, I love you guys. You guys keep me on my toes when I'm wrong, and you can confirm what I say. So you're right. It is the Fourth Amendment. So that's cool. So anyway, the point that I'm making is this whole Twitter files thing and everything dealing with this, access by government entities into private sector companies is a huge violation of our constitutional rights. And the fact that they are doing this on the premise of, well, there is no premise, honestly. But the fact that Twitter, colluded with these people, I'm sorry, but we're getting to a point here where this is just nuts. I mean, I can't even imagine that there isn't any real massive outrage on all of this stuff. I mean, I'm just like shocked that there isn't more outrage about this. And yes, I do use Twitter. I'm going to admit it. So, probably some of my stuff was done. In fact, my old account still has not been reinstated because they keep ignoring my requests. But the point here, though, is this is a huge violation of constitutional rights. And, I can't even imagine. And this is another article where he talks about it, where the government access to Twitter blew his mind. It would blow my mind as well. This is just nuts. We are literally watching the book 1984 in real life. The changing of all of our, language, the breakdown of the statues, the taking down of all the statues, the attack on everything that you supposedly know, like, the whole idea of newspeak and groupthink and everything else. And then you have this where you have the government basically spying on every single one of us. This is crazy. I mean, the whole FISA court thing and the Patriot Act and everything else, those were incredible intrusions upon our civil liberties and our rights. And the government overstepped their constitutional authority. And that's pretty much where we are right now, folks, is our government has gone way outside the bounds of the Constitution. And this is part of the reason that I partner with Institute on the Constitution, that I offer this, Constitution of the United States. You've got to read it. You've got to know it. You need to understand it. This is the founding document for our country. And we're giving it away. And what's sad is that the Gen Xers and the Gen Z, or not the Gen Xers, not so much Gen Xers, because I'm kind of a Gen Xer, I guess. But the millennials and the Gen Zers, they're totally clueless on all of this. And their outrage about, other things which are literally meaningless against stuff like this. This is crazy. This is complete nuts for this. Well, as a positive note, sorry, I just read Three Chevy's comment. No, I don't even know where the heck that comes from. Anyway, I don't know what he's talking about, but whatever. As on a positive note, okay, Elon is also doing this. So apparently he updated the terms of service a little bit, and he removed the policy that was forbidding misgendering or dead naming transgender individuals. Now, if you are not part of Twitter, you really don't understand the fact that Elon Musk has made some what the left would consider controversial statements about transgenderism. One of them being that if you're transing the kids, that you literally are committing some serious acts of criminal intent here. And so, so he is now decided that the whole where you misgender somebody is no longer a problem. It's not something that you can get kicked off of Twitter for. So yeah, and dead naming, just for those of us who don't know, Dead naming is a term used by the LGBTQIA plus divided by sign, percent sign, crap emoji, halfway laughing emoji, whatever. They use it to describe a person's given name being used after they have begun identifying as another gender. So under a new name. So for an example, if Bob decides to become a woman and turn their name into Barbara, and you accidentally call her Bob, or you call her Bob, then, you know, that's not going to get you kicked off of Twitter. So he's making some steps. Now, keep in mind, Twitter is not the perfect place for everybody, and it's getting better, but it's not quite there yet. And I know he's got some time to make some efforts into doing this stuff. So anyway, all right. So let me see. A couple other things that popped. And I want to see what I've got here before I go too far here. But a couple other things that popped. Obviously, the whole, so this is sort of a roundhouse type of deal. The whole Hunter Biden and Biden bank records and things like that is actually heating up. They are, you know, Senator Johnson has sounded the alarm on some jaw-dropping bank records. There have been a couple extra banks that have added, that have responded to the subpoenas. And apparently they are, you know, Johnson and Grassley and some of these others that are specifically going after the Bidens. This is, you know, again, why the mainstream media is covering up for these people, I really don't understand, because they've committed essentially treason. They were foreign agents. They're paid foreign agents. It's been proven. Why is this guy not being indicted or being impeached is obviously on the Democrat side, but they are definitely, I mean, these two guys are like just finding mounds and mounds of bank records and things like that for taking bribes from foreign entities. And so this from Political Insider, apparently the House GOP is now investigating 9 total family members. I mean, obviously we had Joe, Jim, and Hunter, but and even extended to what was her name? Haley, I think. So anyway, yeah, so they're continually going after the investigation. They've identified 6 additional members who may have benefited from the family business. And the family business being, obviously, influence peddling. Comer didn't name the individual members, so we don't know who they are. But generally speaking, it's obviously they're still in a bit of a problem with that. Okay. So we also have the comments about the Biden administration and even the White House on Twitter. You know, the Biden administration, the White House, they keep talking about how the economy is just so great. I've been proving and showing you that it is not. I continue to do that with this as well. This just popped in the Epic Times. More consumers are falling behind on credit card loan payments, the banks are saying. And so these guys are just, yeah, this is just nuts. I mean, we're heading into a recession. People are using credit cards and all these other things. I've even heard like the housing market is starting to drop off in certain areas. So yeah, we're just getting horrible things, going on with this. Also, Biden keeps talking about how the IRS, we need to tax more. Well, apparently, according to this piece in the Epic Times, there was an analysis done, and IRS is under Biden is taxing Americans more than Trump. Well, that's obvious because they repealed the Trump tax cuts. But apparently there was the amount of taxes collected from Americans under President Joe Biden has soared compared to former President Donald Trump. And so while the tax enforcement has also risen, according to IRS data. And so the IRS, according to the piece, collected a total of $4.9 trillion in taxes for fiscal year of 2022. That was October 1 of 2021 to September 30th of 2022, according to the new IRS's newly released data book. At the same time, the IRS issued nearly $642 billion in refunds last year, putting the net amount collected somewhere around $4.26 trillion. By comparison, in 2020, Trump's final year in office, the IRS gross collected $3.5 trillion, with nearly $736 billion in refunds, put the net total at around $2.76 trillion, or around 35% less than during Biden's second year in office. For Biden's first year in office, they have the net total at $3 trillion, or 8% higher than during Trump's final year in the White House. Okay, so obviously Biden has, increased taxes, just like he said he was going to. And by the way, it's not just on those who are earning $400,000 or more. This administration is just a disaster. I don't even understand how anybody could vote for this guy or even want to vote for this guy. Again, for 2024. All right. Big shout out to Sabo, Ohio, for the Rumble rant. I do appreciate that. And that is thanks for bringing the facts. Viva no pantalones, which of course, I hope I did that correctly. I'm not really much of a, Spanish speaker, but I gave it a try. Anyway. Thank you so much for that Rumble rant. I do appreciate it. That $10, it is just awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, last article, really quick. We have. Why does this not surprise me? The left. Here we go. The left always tries to cheat the system, and here we are. AOC, according to the Daily Caller, AOC concealed thousands in campaign spending and ethics complaint alleges. Democrat New York Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, concealed thousands of dollars in campaign spending, an ethics complaint exclusively obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation alleges. Now, keep in mind, she did get an ethics complaint with her dress and attending of that ball that she went to. You know, the dress that said "Tax the Rich" on the back. But apparently, the Federal Elections Commission complaint cites more than $9,600 in reported campaign credit card expenditures that lacked information on the purpose of the charges. Now, the funny thing is that these guys are going after, right now, they are going after Clarence Thomas for not correctly reporting a monetary transaction for Clarence Thomas's mom's house by a supporter and donor to Clarence Thomas. So there, even though, and by the way, that hasn't really been proven yet that he misreported it. That's just what the left is saying. We don't even know all the details on that yet. There's even some lawyers that are saying that there isn't anything going on there with that whole thing. But AOC has been going after him on Twitter as well as some other places and saying the exact same thing. But here she is, doing her own incorrect stuff. And so the person who filed it, Dan Backer, filed the complaint on behalf of the Coolidge Reagan Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization that has also levied similar complaints. This complaint arises from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's repeated blatant violations of federal campaign finance law to conceal how she spent thousands of dollars of campaign funds. On numerous occasions throughout 2022, Congresswoman's AOC authorized candidate committees. AOC for Congress reported tens of thousands of dollars of disbursements for credit card payments and card payment reimbursements to Congresswoman AOC herself. American Express and an entity called Veyond, Veyond, exclamation point, which appears to have provided virtual reality services and apparently no longer operates under that name, the complaint states. So apparently she is back in trouble once again, even though she has made comments and said that Clarence Thomas needs to be impeached and kicked off the Supreme Court for his alleged issues. So yeah, these people are nuts. They just are. I'm sorry. I just can't. I can't do it. They are incredibly out of touch with reality. Oh my gosh. All right. That is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Do me a favor. If you like the show and you haven't done so already, please head on over to Rumble. And when there, sign up for an account. Once you sign up for an account, find the Whiskey Musings broadcast and follow me over there. I do appreciate it. I appreciate all of my Whiskey Warriors, everyone who follows, and you know, it checks it out, even on like Facebook and YouTube, even though, like I keep saying, again, I don't know how long it's going to be, how long I'm going to be on those platforms. I could get kicked off tomorrow. So Rumble is definitely the place to go. And so that's where you really need to be. And I do appreciate all of the support. Have a great rest of your Wednesday evening, and we will see you all Saturday on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.